put your hand up. Okay, great.
Can I? You mentioned about the school of architecture, the awful designs that doesn't work for the people, and I'd like to know from both of you, what do you think it's missing in the architecture school, or the urban design school? The most important thing that is awfully missing.
We did a little research on architectural awards, and they're all for about form and shapes. None are about place. And so that that kind of narrow focus around form and shape, and then the peer reviews that are done by architects do not include, and the rewards do not include people other than the profession. So that profession has sort of siloed itself so much and isolated itself so much, and then it's sort of brought in these iconic architects where if you scrumple up some paper, that's architecture. So it's sort of diminished itself to where it really is not part of the community process anymore. And by bringing this broader idea of design and architecture to the community, at a community level, doing the bottom 3 floors, you actually can bring a whole discipline into the real world, and they can do wonderful stuff. And I even have friends who are architects who agree with that.
Well, I am an architect. If I hadn't met Jan Gale, I probably would have dropped out of architecture school. I think it's very unfair to paint this broad brush. I can be frustrated by the architectural magazines and the awards which focus on a particular kind of architecture. The profession is very broad, and I know a huge number of talented, educated people who do really good projects which don't get into the magazines, which don't take that kind of front line. I think the key thing is this focus is about people. And I think one of the things we have to do is we have to learn to listen. And I think many other professions, you could probably make the same criticism of the medical profession, of just learn to listen. What is the perspective of the user? You know, what's the perspective of the patient in the hospital? You know, what's the perspective of the guy walking down the street? Maybe, you know, I think the criticisms that we make could be the same criticisms could be made of engineers as well. Certain professional roles, when we get blinkered by our professional role, it limits us. So we need to work more multidisciplinary, and we have to work with more normal people, like ordinary people.
Normal people.
Real people.
Real people.
Real people.
And it's more about craft,
Right.
not sort of object.
Right.
And that craft is not about ego. It's about being humble, about how to help people to be supported.
Right.
By it.
Yes.
Well, my name is Claudia, and I have to say I'm incredibly pleased to be here and have the opportunity to listen to all these people talking this morning and now. But picking from the people who spoke in the morning and from what Femi said, I would like to ask you too about when she was saying that there's all these reports from UN and nobody reads it, and then Cecilia said that we should be thinking through this time we're here about what we want from here to take it to the UN meeting. And then I would like to ask you, because being this kind of event, which is absolutely fantastic, always gives me the fear that we are talking to each other and it's not going anywhere from here. It's fantastic to learn all these things and to do all this exchange. But what I would like to come out of here with is an idea of how do we get this word outside? How does it turn into a not proper, but a real movement? Do we need a nice bucket challenge strategy or something to get it out and make it really big?
I think it's very easy well, I know there are many answers. I'm sure you have your own ideas. When we've worked in Latin America, and I say it's probably true all over the world, how do you make this sustainable city thing sexy? And sometimes it's very hard. I think where we talk to the converter, we have this inner circle. One of the things we've talked about in our Latin American work, because of Brazil, is to do a telenovela. And we thought if we really wanted to capture the imagination of people, we need to have a telenovela with these questions like, you know, the handsome, beautiful guy gets injured in a bike accident because there was no bike lane. you know. And everybody will be talking about this, and they'll be in the newspapers, you know, and like you create a debate in a popular way. I think a lot of the way we have this debate is actually quite elitist. You know, we're in this fantastic location, talking to each other, we're patting each other on the back because we're all great. But we do need to bring this discussion out into the public, and we need to find popular, innovative ways to get people talking about this kind of stuff. And I'm sure, I would say, ask your families, the people who are not in the profession, what would get them interested in this subject?
We don't find it very difficult to get people interested because when you talk about a place in their community, they naturally want to get involved. And if you do the lighter, quicker, cheaper, you get more and more people engaged in doing things because things are happening right away. So you can build a movement that way. But Cecilia opened up a door that I hadn't really thought about. I've always thought of how do you get the government to come to the UN Habitat 3 and you know, and I really started thinking that this movement, which is absolutely there, we're seeing it all over, is a powerful movement. But if it goes to the politicians about creating place, it's a word and a way that politicians can get involved, goes to the UN Habitat and develops that agenda that could be very transformative. So I think there may be a way that this group and the other groups that are working to do this could actually become change agents, but at the place level. And I think that might be an answer. We should discuss that later, maybe.
All right. I know the next question is there. Show me where the other questions are. Just put your hands up for a moment, everybody. Not everybody, but where the questions are. Okay. So, okay. Go ahead.
Yes, in the beginning, I would like to thank you both for your great presentation. And my question is for Mr. Fred Kent. I would like to understand what do you mean by from outsider to insider? I mean the philosophy of the expression you used in the title of your...
Well, we used to be pushing almost at every front, trying to get the professions to change, trying to get government to be able to focus on place. And we're now finding that that's not so hard anymore. And with the kind of array of major organizations that need outcomes that are place on our side, we have a very powerful force. And instead of being pushed out by the profession saying, you don't know anything about design, why you should stay out of this. Two, the people know a lot about how the design works, and they can be part of it. So we're transitioning to where there is absolute respect. We call the community as the expert, and there's respect for communities and the way they see their future. Putting that and building that capacity is the way to change without any hesitation. And we're now, that's where the future is, that's where it's going, and many places that's where it is.
Yes.
Hi, once again, from Toronto, Rafael. So my question is more or less about the process itself. I also have the pleasure of interning with the City of Toronto's planning division, and that has given me a really great opportunity to actually look at the plans from the perspective of outreach and communications, which we try to direct the future of planning in the city by engaging. One of the key things, though, from my experience is evaluating the outcomes. So, I mean, here we have professionals and from very big name firms and so forth, but when you're engaging communities, to me, at the end of the day, you don't give them justice unless you really empower them and give them the opportunity to take this public space and build upon it to improve not just that space, but the country as a whole, their family, the future for generations. Lines can be painted and they can be erased. And in Latin America, that has been a history. This is not a pioneer movement that we like to pretend that we're in. We have a history in Latin America, and I was born in Peru, where communities have formed and organized organically, and when the resilience was, when they didn't have another choice. And those communities are there and have plans that are good. And they may not be best practices, but they're good. So instead of recreating this process, how do we harness that knowledge that's already ingrained in the communities themselves and really empower them so that we can be out of the profession and let the communities move forward.
So first of all, David, do you even agree with what Raphael just said? I'm happy for you to challenge him.
I'm not sure if I got all of it.
Okay.
I think it's, well, first of all, places everywhere is different. And I think it's really important that we can't impose anything on anyone. So, I mean, every time, I mean, the way that we work, and I can only talk from our experience, is to go to a place and study it, listen to people, talk to people, and find out what's going on there. And that's why every project is completely different, because the local situations, and I think even within Latin America, between Peru and Argentina, I mean, it's enormous differences. You can't even begin to compare. And I think recognizing that, and our role can be, like when we go to Christchurch or New York or to Mar del Plata, it's one or two people going and sharing the tools that we have, sharing the methods we have, but is always led by a local team who will do their own thing with that. And it will develop in a different way. And I think that's only natural. And I think even within one country, from city to city, even from district to district in the same city, it could be different because of that local culture. So I think I would really stress that everything we do is not imposing anything or a fixed model. And I think that was the failing of this modern architectural system. You could say modern medicine, modern engineering is the idea of, like, you know, we've been in university, we've researched this, and this is the one answer that solves everything. And actually, there's never one right answer. There are many right answers. And it's more about taking your professional knowledge, and I have a huge belief in professionals. I don't think you can just give the pens to everyone, fine, do it yourself. But we have to take our knowledge and our skill set and use them in a humble way and be good at looking and listening.
Fred, some of your projects are in the US. Does that even come up as an issue?
Well, we just use a different, let me just get his question. We break a place down into, say, we call it the power of 10. So if you have a park, you might take 10 places in the park. We give people a tool to go out and evaluate that place and then say what they would like to see happen in that place in the short term and in the long term. So they become they tell us, but they really tell their neighbors what they want to do there. Then a week later, you start doing some implementation and you start growing it. They start to see what works. You make mistakes, which is fine, and it gradually becomes a place. It doesn't cost much at all. It's very powerful. It's totally about them.
I think for us, we try to look at things in a value-based way. We try to build up common values. So rather than the idea that there's a form or something, we don't know what the form will be, we don't know what the ingredients will be, we don't know what the planting will be, we don't know if there'll be benches, we don't know that. But if we can agree on common values, and I mean, I've said always publicly that I really don't believe in master plans, because I don't think, nobody is the master that knows everything. But what you can do is you can develop values. Like, what kind of place, what kind of life do we want to have in this place? What are the values we want? Security, safety, access. You can have all those values, and then in a more flexible, dynamic way, you can deliver things in different economic models, different political systems. Could be the public sector, could be the private sector. But what's important is that the values are delivered, regardless of the situation or the system.
Do you remember that Fred took a pause just as we were heading to Detroit? And Detroit is a huge story in the United States. It's got blight, it's a recession hit. Detroit was Motor City, Detroit was Motown. It was an amazing American city. People were abandoning their houses and leaving. You can buy a house in Detroit right now for about $1. It's extraordinary. There was something you wanted to tell us. Would you just tell us briefly, because I promised that we'd get to it, and it's just an amazing little story about what's possible.
Detroit was at its bottom. Some people say it was at its bottom last May. And we did with on the waterfront, in a park, in the downtown, and some of the neighborhoods, we did placemaking, short-term placemaking plans. The plans were completed in April. They started implementing them in May. A month later, they were operational. One of them was a beach. There were markets. The streets were narrowed. The activation was, there was programming. And all of a sudden, the spirit in Detroit started to change. Someone brought a lot of buildings, started to rehab them. Other people came in and started to buy buildings and started to rehab. Now, when I get on my emails in the morning, there is actually every day a report on what's going on with all the various people that are doing this. And the people are not so much the professionals, they're the normal people. It has become a haven for creativity like nothing I have ever seen. And they will become the city of the future in 5 years. And we will look back on that, and I think it's one of the most profound examples that I've ever seen in my lifetime, and that any of us will ever see, of something that was literally vacant and empty become an amazing city. And it's all about lots of people, not about some designer or something like that. And something happened today, something happened yesterday, and you see this transition going on through the creativity of all the people that are there in Detroit. It's amazing.
I can't think of a better way than to end this session than on that. I know David's like, I have something else to say.
No.
But not right now. All right, so, I'm so evil. Fred Kent, David Sim, thank you so much.